Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast, where we discuss nonprofit technology, cybersecurity, tech project implementation, strategic planning, and nonprofit IT careers. Find us at communityit.com.
Thank you for joining Community IT for this podcast, Part 1. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits. Listen for Part 2 in your podcast feed. Welcome everyone to the Community IT Innovators webinar series. We're so happy that you could join us for today's webinar on diverse perspectives on thriving in nonprofit tech careers. We're excited to partner with 3 women in technology today from 3 different career paths who will have a conversation about building supports and finding environments where women of color can thrive in our sector. This conversation will be moderated by Sarah Wolfe from Community IT. I want to say at the outset that in our prep meetings, we have been very clear with ourselves that if someone knew exactly how to create inclusive workplaces, we'd all be doing it already. We don't have all the answers in the session today. We're interested in exploring in this conversation where the women who are panelists have personally come from and where we can see our sector going. So Sarah, if you want to go to the learning objectives, I'm going to read it aloud as well. So today the audience will be able to use anecdotes from the panelists' personal experiences to describe organizational practices and individual behaviors that can contribute to a safer, more equitable, and more inclusive nonprofit tech industry, and to be able to identify organizational structures and individual behaviors that can create obstacles to that goal. So before we begin, if you're not familiar with Community IT, just a little bit about us. We are a 100% employee-owned managed services provider. We provide outsourced IT support. We work exclusively with nonprofit organizations, and our mission is to help nonprofits accomplish your missions through the effective use of technology. We have about 40 staff. We started in the DC metropolitan area over 20 years ago, and we now serve nonprofits across the US. We're technology experts, and we are consistently named a top 500 managed service provider by Futures, and that's an honor we received again in 2021. So let's get started with this important conversation. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Carolyn Woodard, and I'm the marketing director at Community IT. I identify as a white, older, cisgendered woman, and I'm so excited that after talking about doing this webinar topic for about a year, we were able to bring together these panelists, and I am here to listen. In a moment, I'm going to turn off my camera and I'll be monitoring the Q&A and helping Sarah as she participates in this conversation. So Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, Carolyn. I am very excited to be here today. My name is Sarah Wolfe. I'm the sales manager for Community IT, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a queer, cis, mixed Latina woman who lives on Anacostan land. My journey here was not linear. I graduated with a BA in biology in the summer of 2008. I eventually found my way into education, where I spent the next decade teaching various science classes to middle school and high school students. After years of denial, I admitted to myself that I was in a toxic relationship with teaching and was burned out. At a loss of where to go and what to do next, a friend pointed me in the direction of Community IT. I joined in 2018 as an accounts associate. And since then, I've helped found the Community IT Black Lives Matter working group and moved into sales management September of last year. As Carolyn mentioned, we've been very excited about hosting this webinar. Over the past few years, Community IT has been more explicitly deliberate in our attempts to create an equitable and inclusive environment for our employee owners. We haven't always gotten it right, but we're trying to do our best and trying to learn from both our successes and our failures. One of the things I've taken away from the work I've done is that having open and honest discussions can often be the best way to learn and grow as an individual and as part of an organization. I'm not an expert in equity and inclusion, but I am excited to learn. Some of the things that you'll hear today may be new to you, or they may be things that you've heard many times before. We're hoping that this will be the start of a longer conversation. On that note, I would love to briefly introduce our panelists before they share their own stories. We wanted to gather people with a wide range of experiences since nonprofit and nonprofit tech is such a wide field. Stef Cruz is a strategic communications professional with over 15 years of experience mobilizing millions of individuals to action across national social movements, including the Women's March, Families Belong Together, and the March for Our Lives. She was one of the first digital strategists on Capitol Hill, and most recently, Stef served as the Vice President of Marketing and Digital at America's Promise Alliance. Angela has been the Director of Finance and Operations at Academy of Hope for 2 years and has over 13 years of experience in the private and nonprofit sectors. Angela is a graduate of the Columbia University Nonprofit Management Master's Program and has served on multiple nonprofit boards. Finally, we have Sandy Martins. She serves as the Director of Information Technology at Mentor. She is a proud first-generation Cape Verdean American with 16 years diverse experience in the technology sector, including network technology, health IT, and software application development. She's spent years helping manage complex and technology-driven projects and holds a bachelor's degree in computer graphics and new media from Johnson & Wales University, and will be completing her MBA program at Providence College in 2023. So I would love to have Stef start us off if she can, if she's comfortable with sharing her story and her life experience.
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm super excited to be here with you all. I am based out of Arlington, Virginia. I'm originally from New York City. I am Latina, and my experience coming out of school, I was a poli-sci and sociology major at Pepperdine University, and decided I wanted to both work on the Hill, understand government, and also understand nonprofit and how the two work together. So I actually split my time. I ran a digital media program for girls and young women of color in Columbia Heights, DC, straight out of college. And I also worked on Capitol Hill for a member of Congress. Transitioned to working full-time on the Hill for about 7-8 years. I was on the Hill helping members of Congress understand what digital and online strategies were before they knew what Facebook was. So back in 2006, before Obama really made people understand why digital was important. My focus is on community building and organizing, so really utilizing online tools to help bridge the gap when I was on the Hill for members of Congress and their constituents at home. So did that work and really enjoyed being a part of sort of that pivotal moment where folks were really understanding technology, digital, and the important role that it played in the work that they were doing. After about 7 years, I transitioned to the nonprofit sector. I worked at AARP for about 2 years, working in their Public Policy Institute, really utilizing online tools, again, to mobilize individuals towards action. And then I transitioned to America's Promise Alliance, which is General Colin Powell's education foundation that he started a number of years ago. And there I was the VP of Marketing and Digital Strategy, and really thinking about how we leveraged online tools to mobilize 450 national partners, lifting up their work from the ground, and really sort of creating more of a larger impact in the work that we did. After doing that work for about 4 to 5 years, I decided to transition to consulting. So I left my full-time work and had been doing consulting full-time for about 3 years now. And it's allowed me to sort of broaden the types of organizations that I work with, working both with corporate and nonprofit in the social impact space. About a year ago, I launched my own agency. It's the DigiGeeks Collective, slightly different than a traditional agency. We are a group of consulting partners. So every single one of my partners also does their own freelance and consulting. And we come together for specific projects with nonprofits. And we just hit a year this month, and it was really exciting. And I've sort of been at the intersection of the transition and the centering of digital and online tools. And to this conversation that we're having today, really understanding my place as I've gone through entry-level position, middle management, executive level, at the vice president level, and now, leading my own company, and what it means to be Black and brown young woman showing up in these spaces, and what type of space is created for me to flourish and grow, and the decisions I've had to make where there wasn't space for me, and that's kind of guided a lot of where I've gone and evolved and grown in my career. So I'm super pleased and grateful to be a part of this conversation. As Caroline said, this is an evolving conversation. There's not a clear answer, but I do think together through transparency, through conversations, we can come closer to helping to create more inclusive and diverse environments that are welcoming. So super excited to be part of this conversation. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Steph. Angela, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Angela Kim. I'm with Academy of Hope Adult Public Charter School. My path was also not very linear, and I'm from Arlington, Virginia as well, like Steph, so that's interesting. I just learned that while she was talking. I'm a Korean American, and like Carolyn first mentioned, I spent most of my career early on in the corporate world in the tech space with tech organizations. And so after spending a long time there and spending a ton of time volunteering with my local Boys and Girls Clubs in the Washington, D.C. area, I quickly became just engrossed and just so passionate about that work. And I found myself really gravitating towards that work after hours and on the weekends, nonstop. So, and then eventually that developed into working, creating a junior board and then serving on the board for a little while. That experience actually brought me to a huge decision point in my life where I really, I had one of those existential questions where I said, if I die tomorrow, am I going to be happy with what I've done with myself and what I've done with my strengths and gifts? And I decided I had 3 paths. One was to continue as a volunteer. Second was to donate a bunch of money to nonprofits and causes that I cared about. And 3, should I do that work every single day, day in and day out, to cause the most amount of impact? And so I made the decision to finally move over to become a part of the nonprofit space as a staff member. And I really wanted to give what I thought were my strengths and to make a direct impact on a daily basis. So I decided to quit my job full time. People thought I was crazy. My friends questioned my sanity, but I made the very intentional change to switch over to nonprofit. And I went to grad school, as Carolyn mentioned, and in 2009, I started with Academy of Hope Adult Public Charter School, and we're located in both Northeast and Southeast. And our mission really is to support our learners in our communities, to really give them a second chance at education. And it's truly impacting and changing their lives and their families. it's a very, very diverse staff and learner population, which is one of the things I was really attracted to when I first started here. And since having started in 2019, I think the biggest, most impactful thing that we've done internally as staff was to take our organization from not really ever being virtual in any sort of the sense, and then being totally virtual in a matter of 2 to 3 months, and supporting a population of under 400 students in the field with computers in their hands that some have never really touched or were really not tech literate. And that was, I think, the biggest testament to seeing how does a nonprofit work in this environment under such stress and really trying to meet that goal. So this conversation is definitely relevant and very timely, obviously, of the times. And it's something we all still continue to work through, even here. And it's something we're continuing, it is part of our strategic goal to always be reflective of and mindful of. So happy, I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Sandy?
All right, great afternoon, everyone. Sandy Martins, for any visual impaired folks joining us today. I am a Cape Verdean woman with curly hair wearing a white cream shirt. I was born and raised in Boston, currently living in Rhode Island. And I've always had a fascination with technology. I felt that it was so dynamic, and I love the fact that it had the power of connecting people and bringing people together. Early on, I was into graphic designing, so I studied as an undergrad at Johnson & Wales and had a major in computer graphics and new media. Then at the start of my career, I gained this passion for project management. And I got into it furthermore by joining a local chapter out here in Rhode Island, OSPMI, or Ocean State Project Management Institute. I was a member for about 2 years, and then I joined their board for 2 terms. So for the last 6 years of that opportunity, I really got to learn more about project management while still working towards my career path in managing projects in various fields of networking and unified communications, health IT, travel, software development, and now as a director IT for Mentor, I'm strategically working with everyone on moving the organization towards a more efficient way of managing projects, as well as having impactful change with technology. Now, as much as I enjoy technology, I have to be honest to say that I had to learn how to disconnect from it and really create this balance around to really protect my mental space. So that involves journaling, being with my family. I'm a plant mom. I like to be outdoors. I also like to do biking and hiking and things like that. And when I'm not focused on doing those things, I am focused on my studies. As mentioned earlier, I'm pursuing my MBA, on track to graduate next year of May. So I'm super excited about that. But that's a little bit about me. I'm really excited to be here, and I really appreciate having myself and these ladies here to talk about this wonderful topic.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for sharing a little bit about yourselves to get us started. Now, I would love to get an idea of who we are talking with today. And so we are sending out a poll. Please say how you identify, audience, so that we can know, and select anything that you are comfortable sharing, because that's going to help direct some of the conversations and questions that we have. Going to give it another about 10 seconds before I close the poll. All right, get your last answers in. And all right, so it looks like we have a, do you believe everybody can see that? We are at almost 50-50 split, white versus BIPOC or Black, Indigenous people of color with some mixed race representation. 52% identifying as women, 14 as men, and then some gender nonconforming and LGBTQIA plus people. That is very exciting to hear and see. All right, so thank you so much for sharing. Our first question that we're going to start off with is actually sort of targeting Sandy and Angela a little bit more. How was transitioning into the nonprofit space, but like both on the positive and on the negative side?
I can start us off. So I work for Mentor, who exists to expand the mentoring movement by developing and disseminating high quality research and evidence-based practices across the US and Canada. So coming from a background in corporate space and moving on to nonprofit allowed me to really experience what it felt like to work with a diverse group of people. Close to 70% of white male make up the tech industry. So seeing that shift at my organization was truly impactful. It really impacted my experience in a very positive way. I work with amazing women of color, men as well, at Mentor, and also have the pleasure of working closely with a diverse tech team that supports my IT strategic vision. It is, however, a smaller organization, so people are wearing multiple hats. There's also the challenge of driving technology through change and getting a real and really going through that. So I'm really getting a good lesson on the importance of human behavior and change management. But I'm certainly fortunate to be in this role where I'm learning to approach that area with more grace and developing creative ways to influence staff members and their comfort level with technology.
And for me, because I spent so much of my career on the corporate world, and I'm noticing that more recently, as I've been doing a lot of self-reflection to be much more self-aware these days, I didn't notice some of the changes at first, but being just this year, more recently, just doing a lot of reflection, I've seen a lot of changes. But coming from a corporate world, I took advantage of, or didn't appreciate what it meant to have so much of the resources and the systems and manpower available. There would be entire teams and floors of tech people, a whole team just for help desk, a whole team just for development, a whole team just for R&D. Those are the things that you take advantage of and just don't appreciate. Because when I had an issue on the business side, I would stroll right down and I would talk to the entire team and I would say, this is what I want. And then they would just go make things happen. So definitely the presence of the systems and resources and manpower were a huge difference that I saw from the corporate world and nonprofit side. I did notice that there's, I think I got this really ingrained in my mind coming from the corporate world, which was really being extremely results driven, especially because I came from the sales side of things in the tech space. You're very much measured and evaluated purely based on outcomes and numbers. It's not as much about how are you feeling, how are you doing, what's your mental health look like, and that wasn't quite as much part of the conversation. These days, I'm really feeling like, especially in the last couple of years, really talking about that, and that is very much part of my conversation and really caring about the people. And that's one of the great positives that I noticed being in the nonprofit space, and that transition is, I didn't really, it struck me so odd when I came here to the my first nonprofit organization, and I kept hearing the word family, and it was such a strange thing for me because it was at first very uncomfortable because I hadn't been used to that. And so I got really comfortable with that, and it's great to see that. You can feel that, especially having gone through all of the turmoil and things that have happened the past couple of years. It's been really challenging. Mental health is always part of the conversation now. We constantly have to check in on one another. Whereas that never happened in my corporate experience. That was really just not part of the environment. So So I think those are definitely some of the stark changes that I've seen, and seeing the sheer commitment, and the commitment to work, the mission of and the work that you're doing at your organization in the nonprofit space, and caring about the results, and then also how you get there, is definitely much more of the equation. So that's definitely extremely refreshing, and giving each other grace and time and space to talk about the other things that are going on in addition to the work is a huge positive that I have really, really enjoyed.
That's awesome. So just to dig in a little bit more, like how was it, what was it like working in a very cis male dominated space? You know, Sandy said that 70% of the tech industry is white men. Like how does that feel? What does that look like?
Yeah, I can comment on that. So I joined the tech industry pretty much out of college. So I was in my early 20s at the time. On the sales team that I was working on, I was the first female. So it was kind of like joining a locker room, to be honest with you. For the most part, I was okay and comfortable, but there were many times where you definitely feel uncomfortable as a woman, and you know that this is not okay, and this is definitely probably an HR violation of the things that we're all talking about or the conversations going around me. So that happened on a very regular basis, and because I had been there for such a long time, the environment definitely morphed because a lot more women joined after me. But for a while, it was highly uncomfortable, and I didn't feel as a younger professional comfortable enough to voice my opinions, nor push back, or to say, hey, I don't feel comfortable with what you're saying, and I don't feel good with that. So I didn't feel like I had a voice at that time in my life. I do now, but that definitely wasn't the case back then. And I will say that having had those experiences, and knowing what I do now as a more experienced professional, I really intentionally try to instill my lessons learned to the staff that I work with in my team, especially because they do have females, and to help empower them to say, you know, if they're not feeling empowered by a certain situation or a certain person or a conversation, to let them know, like, hey, this is what I experienced and some of the lessons learned from my past. Nobody ever told me that before because I didn't have female managers in those tech jobs. It was all male. So I really try to help bring that forward to the next generation to help out my staff members so that they don't have to go through the same experience because I know better.
And I'll quickly add to that, at the start of my career, working in the space with cis male was actually great. I had a lot of support and mentoring from my peers in leadership. However, it wasn't until I started to grow in my career that I noticed that it was difficult to kind of have that seat at the table. I was one of few, or if not the only Black woman in project meetings or leadership meetings. And I recall moments where, like, I feel like I didn't have a voice. My input didn't matter. I was clearly overshadowed by the next guy. And similar to you, Angela, like, it was frustrating. It was also intimidating. And at times I started to recognize my core values, and one of that is integrity. So it was only right that I had to do the right thing, was stand up for myself. And especially when I'm presented with those challenges. And while it was uncomfortable and stressful, it was definitely important for me to not allow that toxic behavior to deter me from my goals and where I wanted to be in my career. And, you know, it is overwhelming. And through the years, you go through that, but you really just have to stick to that goal and really look forward to ensuring that, you know, you have a place that you want to be at, and you just have to kind of go through it and work through those challenges.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and I wanted to add too, that's absolutely correct. I also had definitely a shift as well, that I experienced as I grew, because I was with those companies for a number of years. It took me a while to also get to a place where I could feel more confident I have suffered through the imposter syndrome a lot in my life, in and out, a lot. And sometimes really there was no need for me to most often not feel that way, but it took me a while for me to develop my voice and feel like I could exercise my voice, and that I felt like people respected me and things. And so once I got ladder into my career in those tech organizations, I definitely felt much more supported and empowered and had a lot of agency and grew immensely and learned a lot.
Thank you for joining Community IT for this podcast, Part 1. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits. Listen for Part 2 in your podcast feed.
Community IT does these free webinars and podcasts for our community, and we love sharing our knowledge and experience. If you have more questions or are having trouble with your IT at your nonprofit, please get in touch with us on our website, www.communityit.com, so we can start a conversation or schedule an assessment. Downloading any of our free resources there will get you signed up for our webinar reminders, and you can attend our next webinar in real time and ask our experts your own questions. If you love podcasts, please subscribe and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits.